welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is time to release five more teams coming at you for our preseason top 25 ranking. Yes, we're talking about 20 through 16, and the man who those were his glory years, 16 through the age of 20. My co-host, Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
It was all downhill after 20. Doing great, ready to dive into these five, kind of doing research, and they all have similarities where they lost a lot of players to graduation to the draft, still have some depth and have intriguing questions going forward into this season.
So we're working through our preseason top 25, and we all know that as preseason rankings, they're kind of just something for all of us to talk about before the games are played. But let's dive right into it. Number 20, the BYU Cougars finished last year at 10-3, led by Jaron Hall, looking interesting. I got a lot of interesting thoughts on the Cougars right now, Fresh, but I'll go to you first and let you kick it off. What are you thinking about BYU?
Well, I mean, you're coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons, which is impressive for any kind of program. Building momentum. This is their last year as an independent before they joined the Big 12. It's a good and a bad for them, I think, where you have a chance to really put together a heck of a season as an independent school, potentially even make a New Year's Six. But also, do you want to use this as a way to retool and prepare before you jump into conference play where you don't have games that you can schedule? You're going to have a schedule set for you, and you have to play through that conference and play for a conference championship. So you have that benefit. So it's kind of a weird transition season where the team is actually still very competitive. They do return 88% of their 2021 contributors. There's going to be a definite cohesive unit here. 8 returning stars on offense, 11 returning stars on defense. So you bring back a lot of that depth. And the one thing about BYU is some of these guys are 24, 25. They have 1 or 2 kids because they're the Mormon faith. They go on mission and they come back. So these are very more mature players. You don't have the 18 to 22-year-olds. You have some guys who've been through life and have experienced stuff and have that camaraderie, have that understanding, which helps build a veteran football team. And you kind of mentioned there with Jaron Hall as the quarterback. He is the key. And he needs to really, I think he had last freshman season, gave himself a chance to really get his feet after following the footsteps of a very, very good quarterback who went on to the New York Jets. Gave him a chance to sort of focus on what he has to do to win. Moving forward, build off that 2,500 yards jump passing. Can he build off those 20 touchdowns? He can't be the second leading rusher on this team, though. I think to be successful, he's going to have to tone down the running, or he's going to eventually take a bad hit. He's got to let the running backs do their job, keep the mobility, because he did run for 307 yards last year. That cannot be your second leading rusher for the team. And you're losing Tyler Algier, who was an absolute stud for that program. You also got to figure out which of those running backs is going to pair up with Hall in that backfield and help this offense move. The two main options, Lopini Katoa, who had 242 yards last year, or Jackson McChesney, those are the two guys who are going to have to really step up and take their game to another level. Expectations are high, but to make Jaron Hall even better, they've got to be more successful. I think both of them actually might complement each other instead of a one-back system. Using both of them a little more evenly and help them build that offense. Your team, you did score 33 points a game. Your defense gave up 24. You had the 31st best passing game with 264 yards a game, and you ran for 189. So you're very balanced offense there, both mid-30s in the country. Another question, not only they aren't losing many guys, but you kind of are losing explosiveness in the pass catching department. You had 5 players caught at least 20 passes in 2021, but the real guys, Puka Nasa, who had 805 yards and 6 touchdowns, and Gunnar Romney, 594 and 3 touchdowns. It was really the two of them. Yeah, you had guys who caught passes, but those are the two main focal points of that offense. Is there a third or a fourth or a fifth receiver? They did lose some guys to the draft. I say keep an eye on Keanu Hill, going from a freshman to sophomore. Last year he had 18 receptions for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns, but did average 19 yards a reception. So he could be that key offensive playmaker that really helps out, make Hall take that next step and also give that explosiveness to the offense, because you lost your third, your fourth best receiver to the NFL draft. A weird kind of schedule. It's very, very heavy, actually. You got Baylor week 2, Wyoming week 4, Utah State week 5. You play Arkansas week 7. You travel to Oregon week 3, take on Notre Dame in Vegas in week 6. You get Boise State November 5th, and you close out going to the Farm to play Stanford. They loaded this schedule up. I know we talked about in our 6-pack about Boise State being a team that could potentially be that outlier to make a run. The schedule is built for BYU. If they could put together a season of 11-1 or undefeated, navigate that kind of a load, they're definitely in consideration for a New Year's Six. I don't know if they have the firepower across the board. Replacing Algier is going to be tough. I'll pause here and let you sort of dive into it. I think they have veteran playmakers, but do they keep that same momentum going from 2 10-win seasons into 2022?
So, Fresh, let me ask you this question. When you look at their 2022 schedule, every single one of those games, would you be shocked if on Sunday night we were talking that BYU won that game? Like, just pick a random game in that week. Would you be shocked if BYU won that game?
I wouldn't be shocked.
And that's what I wanted to point out, because I was looking at this when I was diving into BYU. I looked into their schedule. The more I went into it, I was like, man, yeah, they got a shot there. They got a shot there. Baylor's going to be a tough game for them. I think going to Oregon might be the toughest game on their schedule. And the only reason why I'm choosing that one over Notre Dame or Arkansas, Notre Dame is in Las Vegas. So it's a neutral site game. Arkansas goes to Salt Lake City. Oregon's the only true road test. You win as you said, if the schedule sets up nicely for New Year's Day 6, and I agree with you, they can suffer one loss in here and still go to New Year's Day 6. I'm gonna go this far though. If BYU runs the table with this schedule, because there are some big marquee names on there. Boise State, Eastern Carolina wasn't a pushover last year. They had a decent year out of that. If you're looking at some of those non-Power 5 schools there, we both think that Wyoming's going to be maybe a little bit better than what they were last year. If they run the table, and that's a huge, huge if, but it's not completely outrageous to say that. If BYU runs the table this year, they could very easily set themselves being in the playoff. Like, they would have the strength of schedule piece. They would have the undefeated piece. And we also look at this. You look at some of those top 4 or 5 teams. Each one of those could easily suffer a loss. And this could be your Cincinnati this year, just because of how the schedule sets up.
Their schedule, I think, is even right now on paper stronger than Cincinnati's was going into the season.
And I think that's very, very true. I like this Jaron Hall kid quite a bit. Coming in last year, you lose the number 1 or number 2 overall pick, and usually there's like a major drop off. There wasn't. The kid wound up having 20 touchdowns. He wound up running for a handful more. He only threw 5 interceptions, and he didn't start the whole year too. BYU could arguably have one of the best or at least a top 5 offensive line this season. The other kid I'm really interested to see how he does is Christopher Brooks, the transfer from California, 6'1", 235 senior. This is a kid, just like you said earlier. This is BYU always puts out a very, very mature team out there. They're not going to beat themselves in a lot of games. You're going to make sure you're going to have to beat them. Yes, a lot of times, Oregon, you're going to have more talent than BYU. Baylor, you're going to have more talent than BYU. Arkansas, you're going to have more talent than BYU. Notre Dame, same thing. But you can't make mistakes. You're still a young group of kids. Oregon's a young group of kids. BYU's not. I'm looking at their depth chart right now, and I'm looking on there. They are looking like they are almost predominantly juniors and seniors. There's a handful of sophomores sprinkled in there, but I really like this Christopher Brooks kid. I think he's going to be that power run game. He's going to be a little bit different than Tyler Algier, but I like this Christopher Brooks kid. I think he's going to be something special. The left side of their offensive line, all returns. I'm liking that as well. But it really is going to come down with Hall. If Hall stays healthy, this team is going to be in every game. If Hall takes an injury, and he was out for a handful of games last year, if he goes down, then we've pulled the air out of this balloon. Like, this, BYU could easily fall down to, and I think that's the range for them. They could be undefeated, or they could have a 5-loss season. And anywhere in between is completely reasonable with the Cougars.
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely the straw that stirs the drink. I mean, the way you see this offense be successful, you're going to have a running game to help dictate ball control, keep the defense off the field, and also set up for a play action standpoint and let those receivers do their work. The floor for them is 8-4 because in theory we don't know. We expect Notre Dame to be very good. I think honestly Notre Dame has a tough game versus Ohio State. After that, they might show their merit. Arkansas, you know what you're going to get. Boise State's a good football team, and sort of see how the season trends with injuries. I think 8-4 and 9-3 is a realistic prediction. But if they went undefeated, I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, it's one of the most interesting teams. And if you were to ask me, what team are you most curious about? Like when we get halfway through the season, who do you want to see where they're at the halfway point? And I think my answer's got to be the Cougars because there's just so much intrigue. Because if they are 6-0 halfway through the year, they got some big wins on there. That means that they going into that Notre Dame game, and if they're 5-0, that means they beat Baylor and they went to Oregon and won at Oregon. People are going to be talking about BYU. BYU will be a top 10 team going into that Notre Dame game. That could be a real barn burner out there in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
All right, so our number 19 team, it's Pac-12 After Dark, baby. It's the UCLA Bruins. UCLA finishing the year 8-4. Chip Kelly kind of rebounding. We talked about it at the beginning of last year that Chip Kelly was kind of on the hot seat. And then there comes this kid, and he goes by the 3 letters DTR. Impressive year by the Bruins, and it was only derailed by injuries. I think UCLA would have really, really had a chance. That loss to Fresno and that loss to Arizona State really hurt them, but I think more than anything else, that losing DTR and DTR not being fully healthy really impacted him. He returns, but Fresh, hit me up with some of what you're thinking about UCLA.
Well, first off, I think the Bruins should start 4-0. Like if they're not 4-0, there's issues across the program to start. That way, the schedule builds out. Their real season starts September 30th when they host the Washington Huskies, taking on Washington, who brand new coach, but always seem to have players there at that program. They do a real good job developing guys up there in Seattle. That could be a nice little game. First test really getting to Pac-12 play. That starts a 3-game stretch of the Huskies, Utah, and then going up to Allison Stadium up in Eugene and taking on Oregon. If they can come out of that at 6-1, 7-0, they're legit. They do get a slight break with Stanford, Arizona State, and Arizona before they get Lincoln Riley and USC on November 19th. But they had that 3-game stretch early in the season, which really I think is going to test this entire team. They were, as we picked them, I had them as, we both I think had a team on a rise last year. They showed up early. They had a lot of explosion. Injuries sort of took them back. They're not going to be under the radar this year. People are going to be looking at UCLA, Chip Kelly, like this is your time because USC's coming. If you don't really take advantage of it now and take your program to the next level, you could be falling behind in the Pac-12 and just become the second or third team and not a team that's still back to contending. DTR threw for 2,400 yards last year and 21 touchdowns, ran for 609 and 9. Another situation where we have a mobile quarterback who I think needs to take a step back from the running perspective for his own health. If he keeps taking off as the second leading rusher, the third leading rusher of this team, and takes extra hits that are unnecessary, it becomes more detrimental down the stretch of the season. Charbonnet ran for 1,113. He's got to be the number 1 guy. Brown is no longer there. Brown went to the NFL. As the number 2 running back stepping in, take a look at Kazmir Allen. He caught 17 passes last year and had 4 touchdown receptions, but only had 9 carries. He was the third running back, technically the fourth if you put DTR there in his carries. He's going to be that number 2 right now on paper. Can he bring that explosiveness out of the slot in, more of like I kind of look at him at DeAnthony Thomas. Look at Chip Kelly when he was at Oregon. He had the guy who was a running back, but they can put him in the slot, run him over sweeps, reverses, get him the ball in space. Kind of like a Kazmir Allen who has that speed and has that ability to catch the ball in space and move in behind the backfield and take that ball in from shotgun. Really being that all-around threat. He could be that nice little change of pace back for the Bruins that they're going to need. You look at the offense last year, Chip still has work to do. His offense was high-flying at Oregon. Even with the Eagles, he was able to move the football. Last year, they only threw for 226 yards, was 70th in the country, but ran for 215, which was 14th. They scored almost 37 points a game, which was 48th in the country. Can they take that next level? Can they get it to 40? Can they get maybe 260 yards passing a game and maybe get 220 yards rushing? Can take an extra step with that offense and really explode? I think it's going to be difficult early. The reason why I say it'll be very difficult early, Kyle Phillips and Gray Dolchik were the two top receivers. Both went to the NFL. They combined for 101 receptions and 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. That right there is a lot to replace. Where's Chip Kelly going to find players to step up and take over? Chase Cota was the number one receiver behind the two of them, and he only had 18 receptions for 286. So it's really the passing game was two guys, and the running game was the fuel and the focal point. Can they find another two receivers in there to really make impacts? And then on top of that, if the offense isn't explosive, where does this defense go? New defensive coordinator Bill McGovern came in there. Can he get the pass rush and the pass defense to improve? Linebackers, Mitchell Laguna only had 25 tackles and 2 sacks. Jordan Genmark Heath, 23 tackles, 3.5 sacks. And linebacker Bo Calvert, 38 tackles and 4 sacks. They've got to take that next step. They've got to get 5, got to get 6 sacks, maybe 60 tackles, 65 tackles. If they are, that means guys are making plays on that back end of the team. Then looking in the defensive backfield, you're going to start going against USC. You're going to go other teams are going to be throwing the ball around. You've got to find a way to lock that down and let the pass rush get home. You got to look at Stephen Blaylock, the veteran corner, needs to be a little more, needs to make more turnovers and be more impactful there. And then Irby and Churchwell, the two safeties, need to really step up, maybe even play that slot in that corner spot. If they move them drop down, they've got to show their merit and their worth. There's a lot of questions on defense, a lot of athletes, but this Chip Kelly has got to finally build off that winning season and take the next step. If he falls back down, the program, I think, might slip because Oregon's not going to go anywhere. Washington's always going to contend. Utah is going to be there, and if USC picks it up, you could become an afterthought in the conference. You've got to take this year, build off of last year, and move forward. They're an 8-4, 9-3 team. I'm leaning more toward 9-3. If they do get lucky and have an offensive explosion, maybe a 10-win season in the regular season, but 9-3 is where I'm targeting, which would definitely be an improvement for the Bruins.
Listen, this thing is going to start with DTR and Charbonnet. Like, don't expect UCLA to do something different this year. I know there's a lot of questions in the passing game. DTR and Charbonnet are going to be the RPO action right there. Expect UCLA, I want to say by week 4, I bet you UCLA is probably the top 2-3 rush offenses in this country. You know, if you are in Vegas and you could put that down as a bet, if you can say like how many yards rushing is UCLA going to have, take the over. I would say over 200 easily all 4 of those first games. And that's where I say you're talking about them struggling early. I think that this is going to allow them. This schedule is so easy to start the year. It allows them to work out some of those kinks. You're looking at a really interesting player. The guy I circled on mine was the Duke transfer. He's a senior, Jake Bobo. One, I like the name, Bobo, but he's 6'5", 215 senior, a big target for DTR, especially in that red zone. But they got to find somebody to replace Kyle Phillips. If they don't replace someone with Kyle Phillips, then you're gonna be able to stack 8 in the box and stop UCLA's rushing attack. They basically flipped the entire defense. They only got 2 returning starters on defense, but it's got to come from the back end. Their pass defense was absolutely horrendous. They weren't terrible against the run, only were allowing 124 yards per game on the ground, but they were absolutely god-awful against the pass last year. You think back to that Arizona State game where you saw how explosive UCLA's offense was. In that first half, they were going back and forth with Arizona State. People forget Arizona State was fairly decent to start the year. They kind of they fell off a cliff at the very, very end. You saw what that UCLA team was like, and they could score really, really quick. They could put points up in bunches, but that defense was always lacking and needing something. Maybe it's a good thing that you only have 2 returning starters. Maybe it's a good thing that you're replacing basically everyone on your defensive line and 2 out of the 3 linebackers in your 4-3 defense. I'm interested to see what UCLA does. I really am, because I think that they had success to build on, but not enough success where there's a high level of expectations for UCLA. So they could still, I don't want to say sneak up on anybody because I don't think you're going to be able to sneak up, but I don't think you're going to be everyone's really full attention. Like you're not Oregon, Utah, or USC. You're not that team that everyone's going to circle. We're circling this game on our schedule and this is the game we're going to show out for is the UCLA game. I think UCLA could have a really great year. I'm with you. I see a 8-4, 9-3. Those three games that you kind of pointed out, that Utah game, at Oregon, and USC. It is interesting that you get Utah and USC in Los Angeles. I think that gives UCLA a little bit better of a shot, but I'm looking at 9-3, 8-4 again for them. But I am very intrigued for the UCLA Bruins.
One thing is PSA. Hey, UCLA fan, how about you show up and at least try to fill the Rose Bowl and support your football team? There's some crowds last year that are a little lacking, and I think you have a good football team there. Make your drive out there and enjoy the environment and support the Bruins.
Yeah, UCLA is one of those few schools though that I think there's still more of a basketball school than it is a football school.
Definitely.
All right, Fresh, number 18, the Wisconsin Badgers. I did not know this until I did my research here. It wasn't Georgia who had the number one statistical defense last year. I was shocked to find that out. It was actually the Wisconsin Badgers. Yards per game and rushing, preventing the run there. They had the number one rated defense in the country last year. Now, they were number 4 in scoring defense, but they had the number one rated defense in total yards. That shocked me because I really thought that was Georgia by and far away. And what did Wisconsin do? They did exactly what we expect them to do every single year. Play defense, run the football. I'm going to just go, and before I pass this over to you, I'm just going to say it. Wisconsin is going to be held back by their quarterback. Graham Mertz is the worst quarterback in the Big Ten going into this season. I am not a Graham Mertz fan. I don't really care for the dude. He threw 11 interceptions to 10 touchdowns last year. You look at what they were able to do offensively, and it means that it's Brazen Allen. It's that running game. You have a 6'2", 240 absolute monster as a tailback in the backfield. That should make your life extremely easy as a quarterback. When you have a running back that's that good, when you have a running back that can control the game and give everyone's attention on defense, that should make some very easy throws for you. And the fact that you really struggled passing the ball, and you threw that many interceptions, you couldn't throw touchdowns. They had a really, really rough stretch last year to start the season. You look at that. Lost to Penn State. Gets absolutely blown out by Notre Dame. And Wisconsin does not like to get blown out by Notre Dame. Then you go and Michigan blows you out. And then at the end of the season, you travel to Minnesota with the Big Ten title on the line. You have a chance to get some revenge on Michigan going to the Big Ten title game. And that was after we knew Michigan was going to Indianapolis. And you completely just pee down your leg, crap the bed, whatever analogy you want to use here, and blow it in there. This Wisconsin team is going to be good. Wisconsin is going to be good. They're going to do exactly the same as they did last year. They're going to play phenomenal defense. I don't care. I don't care if they are only returning 3 people on defense. Wisconsin plays good defense. It does not matter who you go. Listen, Wisconsin's scheme, I could go line up and play, I don't know.
Well, all right. Let's.
But yes, you're getting what I'm saying. In my earlier years, no, I'm saying this. We could find anybody. We could find some guys, and as long as you understand the game of football, you could be a really good defensive player at Wisconsin. Their scheme is phenomenal, and that's year in, year out. They plug people in. They lose guys to the draft. They come back and forth. But it's going to come down to Graham Mertz, man. If he does not take a significant, and I mean significant jump forward, Wisconsin's going to be sitting at 9-3, 8-4. If he does, or I don't even want to say this, but maybe they wind up taking him out and putting someone else in. I don't really know who they got behind him, but if they did that, that could be the difference of Wisconsin winning that West and having a chance at a New Year's Day 6 compared to them just kind of repeating, putting it on repeat and running it back last year and finishing up 9-3.
Well, I mean, first off, if you're a Badger fan coming into this, Paul Chryst and Jim Leonard are both Badger alums. They're invested in the program, and that's why Jim Leonard has stayed and didn't go take NFL jobs. They know there's pride in what they do, and they have their mentality, and they follow that Barry Alvarez model of we're going to build the offensive line, we're going to run the football, and we're going to play nasty, aggressive defense. They're not going to try to be flashy. You're not going to see all the 5-star recruits going to Wisconsin. You see guys who are going to be walk-ons and go through their fabulous walk-on program, or guys who are going to be fifth-year players and spend the entire 5 years there developing, going through that red shirt year, getting in the weight room, figuring out the scheme, running through the practice squad, and going there. Now, I mean, that's all great, but you mentioned earlier, how can this defense, who always produces players, replace 8 starters and significant players? 2 of the top 5 tacklers only returned. So that means 3 of your 5 top 5 are gone. Nick Herbig had 61 tackles and 9 sacks, very significant player. And linebacker Noah Burks, 42 tackles and 4 sacks. Those guys return. But then you're trying to replace Chanel and Sanborn, combined for 173 tackles and 13 sacks. That's a lot of production. You've got to find 2 more linebackers who are going to step up and play at that exact same level. Then you look at the secondary. Well, I think this is the bigger question mark. Scotty Nelson was the leader of that secondary. 50 tackles, an interception, 5 pass defense. Been there for 4 years, making tons of plays. He's now gone. His partner back there, John Torchio, can he bring his game to a different level? 35 tackles and 3 picks and a half a sack. Can he take that to a higher level? Can he be the general in the backfield? Now, that's all great and all, but your 2 starting corners, Caesar Williams and Phelan Hicks, both in NFL camps now. Who becomes that number 1, number 2 corner on the edge? Who becomes your nickel? Where are these guys coming at? The one benefit, Jim Leonard was a safety in the NFL and a safety at Wisconsin. He's a secondary guy. He's going to put that shell back there and help keep them protected the best he possibly can. But when you get into shootouts, that's where the problem really becomes much more evident. This defense is not built. If the team is putting up tons of points, it's going to be tough for them to get a stop and keep the offense in the game. If the offense can't do anything, the offense is turning the ball over, they keep running back on the field, they're put in short yardage situations or short down distance, they're going to struggle eventually because they're just going to break. You look at the Penn State game, that opener, they had Penn State shut down and Mertz threw 2 interceptions inside the 15-yard line in the fourth quarter that cost them the football game. The Notre Dame game, they were up by 3 going into the fourth quarter. He threw 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter, and they lost the game. He puts them in bad situations. The defense plays fantastic, but for how long? When did that bend and not break mentality, when does that come in? You mentioned Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen, the running back, didn't even play really at the beginning of the season. He was a freshman, sort of was 4th on the depth chart. Injuries got him in there, and he ended up running for 1,200 and change and 12 touchdowns. They ran, as like always do, 210 a game, 21st in the nation. But can Braylon Allen be the haul for the entire year? Is he going to be worn down later in the stretch? Is he still fully healthy? Do they have a number 2 that's going to step in and give him a spell every once in a while? Can he actually take the next step and be the focal point when everybody knows he's getting the football? Graham Mertz, 19 in yards, you mentioned. You talked about him, his struggles. Well, I think it's going to even hurt him worse is his top 3 targets are gone. He even struggled in the passing game, and your 3 guys who have been there forever, and Jake Ferguson, Kendrick Pryor, and Danny Davis, all went to the NFL in their NFL camps right now. Who is he going to trust to get the ball to in a meaningful situation on a big 3rd down? Is it going to be Chimere D, the top returner, who had 19 catches for 272 and a touchdown? Is he going to be the number 1 go-to guy? Who's going to step up and be that one person who, when Mertz drops back and needs someone to get the ball to, is going to actually be relied on and make the catches? That's what I think the Badgers got to find. And the next part, can the offensive line actually take a next step? Can they give him some more time from a protection perspective, and can they open up more holes? I think it's more evident on offensive line when you can block, whether it's pass protection or run blocking, when you know that's all you have in your arsenal. If you're a running team, kind of very impressive, like Army and Navy when they run the option. You know they're running the football, but those guys are still able to block and open holes for the running backs. Here, and this Badger offensive lineman, who is their top recruits the past 3 years, their top 3 or 4 recruits every class the past 3 or 4 years have all been offensive linemen, whether guards or tackles, and highly touted ones. Can those guys, Trey Wagner, Jack Nelson, Nate Ritchie, Raleigh Melman, and JP Benishwall, can those guys actually become a cohesive unit, get in there and plug and play, and drive that line of scrimmage back and let the running backs do their work and protect Mertz and give him some time to throw? That's going to be the real key is can they keep that offensive line going, let the running backs continue to produce, and maintain ball control to save the defense. You got Ohio State at Ohio State on September 24th. Illinois Northwestern always played the Badgers tough. Somehow they just had their number, and they always make those games weird. And then a stretch of Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. It's a very grueling schedule. That defense can play as good as they can. You're replacing a lot of guys. The offense is going to be the real sticking point. Can they actually score enough to give the defense a break? I think 6-6, 7-5, they have the talent, but I think just looking at right now, 6-6, 7-5 is where I think the realistic finish for the regular season for the Badgers.
So your 4 hardest games are all on the road. You go to Ohio State, you go to Michigan State, you go to Iowa, and then you go to Nebraska. So I'm looking at their schedule here fresh, and I'm looking for the 2 other losses possibly out of their schedule to go 6-6. Purdue, maybe. Minnesota, maybe. I still think I'd take Wisconsin over Nebraska. I like the running game better. I think it's pretty much even when you come to Michigan State. It could probably say about even when you get to Iowa. I think that Iowa-Wisconsin game, the over-under should be about
9.
20, maybe, if that. Because neither one of them really have an offense, except, you got Braylon Allen for the Badgers. I don't know, man. I have a hard time saying that the Badgers are going to go 6-6. I just can't bring myself to say the Badgers would be that bad. I feel you where it comes down to offense. I'm going to stick with, I'm just going to say they're going to repeat last year. I'll go here where I'm going to say you'll have 3 losses going into this game, and then we'll see what you do in the bowl game. But I'm going to go. I'll go 9-3. I'll go 9-3 in the regular season. Depending on where those losses come into play, you're going to be right in it for the West. But like I said, until Wisconsin produces a bad defense for me, I'm going to trust that Jim Leonard knows what he's doing.
I trust Jim Leonard. I'm just kind of worried that the offense will let him down. That offense can't get me 13. That's the one part that it worries me that they just don't have the firepower, and they try to play that team philosophy. Where are you going to get the points from? Unless your defense is scoring. I hope they do better, but I think 6-6, 7-5 is probably realistic just because the offense just is lacking a lot of depth and a lot of explosion at this point.
Number 17, Pig Suey, Arkansas Razorbacks. Interesting year. Arkansas started out like gangbusters last year. We saw Arkansas. We were talking, this could be something special for the Razorbacks. And then, yeah, they go to Georgia and lose 37-0. And you kind of go back and wonder, was Arkansas a paper tiger last year? You look tough, you look great. You go in and you beat the living crap out of Rice. You win by 19 against Texas. You beat A&M, who didn't have a quarterback, by 10. And then you feast on Arkansas Pine Bluff later in the year. You go to overtime versus LSU. You played Alabama tough at the end. You beat Missouri. You beat Penn State in the Outback Bowl. I don't really know which Arkansas team was the real Arkansas. Was Arkansas this phenomenal team that just, Georgia was that good and Ole Miss was better than, just one player and Auburn decided to put it together a game? Or was it, we beat teams that we're supposed to beat, and then when we play legit when we play the cream of the crop, we wind up getting our lunch handed to us. You know, Treylon Burke is gone. I think that's a huge, huge loss, but you do bring KJ Jefferson back, 21 touchdowns, add in another 664 yards on the ground with 6 scores there. He's going to be probably one of maybe the more electric players in the SEC. I mean, he's going to be fun to watch. Get the highlight reel ready for that kid. But go ahead, Fresh. I'll get your take on the Razorbacks.
I mean, I think the first question I had was, is this offense was it just Treylon Burks or something else? Like, KJ Jefferson is the quarterback. In any situation, the quarterback is going to be the guy who's going to touch the ball and make things happen, whether it's the passing game or with his athletic ability. But the focal point, was it just Burks or not? And you kind of look back, they had 3 running backs all run for over 500 yards and at least 5 touchdowns. So they were a very run-centric team, even though they didn't really feel like they were. You look at Raheem Sanders, Dominique Johnson, and Traylon Smith, all did their littles, and they all had their games, but they never had that one massive football game where they just took over. I think the 3 of them all complement each other real well. But now this season, can they repeat that? Can they take the next step? Can one of them take that over that role and become that number 1 premier running back in the offense? Or do they keep rotating them in there to keep them all healthy and fresh? I think the 3 of them have to have a big year, though, and build off that 500-plus yards each and take it a little more, because KJ Jefferson is going to be trying to, do too much with Burks not being there. And until he gets comfortable with his receiving threats on the edges, he's going to try to manipulate and run and be a little more of a factor. And I think defenses now, look in 2020, he came in late in the season to be the starting quarterback. Nobody really expected what they saw of him in 2021. He burst on the scene early in that season and carried them, and was the guy who really was, I think, coming of his own. Now he has the expectation to be better. Can he actually build off his own season and go from there? Who else from the receiver standpoint is going to step up and take advantage of the opportunity? Your second leading receiver was Tyson Morris, and he only had 24 catches for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. You look at your top signee, Isaiah Sandig, I got a feeling he's going to be involved. And then you have sophomore receiver Catrone Jackson. I think he's going to have to, go from the number 4 option to a number 3. But the one who's really going to be looked at to take that Burks mentality and that Burks spot in the offense is transfer Jadian Hazelwood from Oklahoma. Another guy from Oklahoma who departed when everything sort of went the way that it all did. He was a 5-star receiver early on going into Oklahoma. He chose the Sooners over Georgia, and now he's playing at Arkansas. There's a Sam Pittman connection because Pittman was on the staff at Georgia when they were trying to recruit him. You hope maybe that connection will spur some offensive lightning and help that offense move forward for Arkansas. They are going to have to score. You kind of look at, we mentioned one of them. There are 2 non-conference games that are highlighted. You open with Cincinnati and you go to Provo to take on BYU. They aren't playing 4 slappies. They have 2 quality teams they got there. The real thing that caught my eye with the schedule is, they play in the SEC West, but you get A&M and Bama back to back. 9-24, and then October 1st. This team could be 3-2 or 2-3 by October 2nd. Their record might not reflect how they play, so watch those 2 games closely and see if they're actually competitive or not, and then look from there and how they build off those. You're 85th in the nation in passing. You're going to have to be better to be able to compete, especially in those 2 football games. But you did run for 227 yards, which are 7th in the nation. Run the ball. You scored 30. You gave it 24. You're going to have to play a little better defense. I don't think the offensive threat early on is going to be there. Of all the craziness in the transfer portal, they did kind of overhaul the defense. You brought in Landon Jackson from LSU, Drew Sanders from Alabama, and their corners Dwight McCaughren from LSU and Latravius Brini from Georgia. They kind of brought in some veteran players from the SEC, put them on the defense, see if they gel. If they do, this team could be as good as 8-4, maybe 9-3. But if KJ takes a step back, or these offensive weapons don't perform at the level that they're capable of, or these defensive players don't gel, you could be 6-6. I think they took faith in Sam Pittman. They gave him an extension through 2026, today. But there is a range of 6-6 to 8-4. If they're lucky, 9-3. I don't think they're going to sneak up on A&M this year. And Alabama's, with the comments where they've had with Jimbo, I got a feeling Nick Saban's going to have Bama focused all season. So if you can get through and have the offense play at the same level and the defense give you something, I think Arkansas could be a nice, solid football team. I don't think they're winning the SEC West. I don't think they're going to a New Year's Six bowl game. But 8-4 would be another fantastic season, especially coming out of that SEC West with the schedule they have.
I'll say this, Fresh. If Arkansas can get to week 8 and get to that Liberty game in November on November 5th, and they are 5-4 or 5-3, and you're going into that Liberty game no worse than 5-3. I'm seeing Arkansas finish the year right where we have them at 17. If they are worse than 5-3, I might refer to Arkansas as maybe the most overrated team in the SEC. I think right now, for some reason or another, and I get this feeling. I said this about Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a lot of talent on that team. Like, there's talent all over the place. It's unproven talent, and the kids got to play, and they got to be put in hot water and see how they react on that. Arkansas, the only person that we really, really know what we're going to get is KJ Jefferson. I don't know. Like, I think that I'm worried that they'll live off of their laurels from last year. I don't think that they're going to be as hungry, because they're coming, you look at 2020 and they were coming off of what? I think they only had like a 3-win season. I think they went 3-7. You're hungry when you have a 3-7 season. You go 9-4. You beat Penn State in the Outback Bowl. You're feeling really good about yourself. Just like you said, you're not going to sneak up on anyone. Cincinnati, they're going to take you seriously. You look at Texas A&M, that's in Arlington. And like you said, you go A&M, Alabama, you got the Pirate, and then you got to travel all the way out to Salt Lake City, and then you got to travel back into the state of Alabama to play Auburn. Even though you got a bye week in between BYU and Auburn, that's a stretch, man. That's a stretch. All of the, you look at that stretch right there. If you wind up really taking it on the chin, boy howdy, wait till Arkansas, winds up dropped out of the top 25. Like I said, you got to circle week 8. Those first 8 games, they got to go 5-3. They got to get into that Liberty game 5-3. Then, and at that point, I'm saying, okay, you're going to wind up maybe being like a top 15 team, and you are who you're supposed to be on paper. But I'm worried that Arkansas might be considered a little bit overrated to me.
I think one saving grace though for this team is that Sam Pittman's an offensive lineman at heart. He's an offensive line coach. They're going to run the football, and those Hogs, pun intended, are going to play at a high level for him. So if you bring what they say on the road, you bring your defense and you bring your running game, and you play smart, and then they play disciplined, smart, and run the football and play somewhat respectable defense. 8 wins is manageable, but that Arkansas trip to A&M and that Arkansas playing Alabama, that's going to really test the mettle of the entire program. There, you had the hype of A&M and the high recruiting that they have, and Kyle Fields, no place to be no place that you're going to get to be able to chance to hide. And then you play Nick Saban, you play Alabama, who has been the bell cow and the staple of success for years now. If you can play at those levels and give them a game, it shows you're going the right direction. If you flop there, like you said, then you become that paper champion mentality of they're June, July, title winners and not November, December title winners.
It's going to be really, really interesting to see how they wind up producing later on in this. All right, Fresh, let's stay in the SEC. Our number 16 team, Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels, coming in last year 10-3. Heck of a year by the Rebels. It's a big what if. What if Matt Corral doesn't go down at the very end of that year? What if he would have been healthy and be able to go into that bowl game? Winds up being a 3rd-round pick with the Carolina Panthers. I don't know. Didn't really when they lost Corral last year in the bowl game, they wound up really losing to Baylor. Baylor was pretty good last year too, so it's not like a terrible team to get stomped on or anything like that. But that's where the question comes into play, because you're looking at what they got. They got 5 players coming back on defense, 5 players coming back on offense. You do have some weapons there. You did do very well in the transfer portal. I think Jackson Dart is a good transfer to Ole Miss. I really do, because he had terrible coaching over there at USC. And he's getting maybe possibly one of the better, I would say, top 5 quarterback coaches in the entire college football with Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin's going to have Jackson Dart ready to play. I think he's going to be very interesting. You look at Zach Evans transferring from TCU, 6 foot, 215 junior. Looks like he could probably be the leading rusher coming in there. You had to replace a few people. The other one you like too is Jonathan Mingo coming in. He's probably your only returning, but he's a senior wide receiver. That offense still could be pretty prolific this year. There's going to be some growing pains, but you look at their first 5 games on their schedule. Troy, Central Arkansas, you go to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Tulsa, and then Kentucky. Kentucky is the first challenge, but then you go at Vanderbilt and home versus Auburn. Looking at their schedule right now in the first 7 games, only that Kentucky game is where would I even start to say that the talent level would be evenly matched.
Be 7-0 going into LSU.
They should be, yes. Kentucky's the only one that would be even possible for them to lose.
This team has the makings. I think I really liked how you talked about Jackson Dart. He didn't have much coaching at USC. He was finally starting to take the next step and got injured last year. So he's coming off an injury. Another California kid. One difference, though, that he has from Matt Corral is that he does not have that athletic ability to run. Matt Corral's legs is what really made him the playmaker that he was because he ran all over the field. Dart is more of a passer mentality. How is Lane Kiffin going to build that offense around a quarterback who's not as mobile? Zach Evans was a big-time running back recruit going after Alabama, Georgia, and Florida ran on him. He chose TCU. Now he's transferred from TCU, comes in to replace Ely at running back. He was a stud at TCU. I think he's going to have a chance to really thrive more because Lane's going to spread the field. And there's going to be so many options on that offense, it's going to open up holes for him to be able to move. The one worry, though, is Dart, is that Luke Altmaier was a quarterback came as a highly recruited kid last year, got a couple snaps in there late when Corral got hurt, played halfway decent in the Sugar Bowl, but obviously it was the first time he saw the field all year. Does Altmaier even beat Dart out? Or was he told, hey, it's your job no matter what? The reason why Dart left is because there's a quarterback who followed Lincoln Riley out to USC from Oklahoma. He immediately wasn't playing. And this offense is going to be fantastic. You think they had a 22nd best passing game. They threw for 275 basically, and they ran for 218. They scored 34 points a game. That offense is going to be high-flying under the Lane train no matter what you do. But the offense, that 217 a game sets up the passing game. And when you lose your top 3 rushers, Ely ran for 768, Snoop Connor ran for 647, and Matt Corral ran for 614. 5 touchdowns from Ely, 13 from Connor, and 11 from Corral. That is a lot of production that you've got to replace. I don't know if Zach Evans can do it by himself. Top returning behind them was Henry Parrish, who ran for 533. That's a decent amount, but your 4th leading rusher and then Evans, can the 2 of them make up that production? You lose again your top 2 receivers. And we've had this conversation in the past. They lose A.J. Brown. They lost DK Metcalf's like, oh, what's Ole Miss going to do? How are they going to find receivers? Last year, Elijah Moore leaves, gets drafted. What are they going to do? Who's to be the receiver? Dontario Drummond, 76 receptions. Braylon Sanders, 549 yards. The 2 of them, both in the NFL now. You brought up Jonathan Mingo. Ja'Cory Pearson had 26 catches, 392. And then Danis Jackson, 12 catches, 244. That's right there, the 3 guys you're bringing back. Who's going to be that next receiver who's going to step up for Ole Miss and be the number 1 guy? Who's going to be the explosive player to take off the back of the defense? One thing before is we all made fun of Ole Miss not having a defense and never being able to stop anybody. Last year, they had 40 sacks, 11 interceptions, 10 fumble recoveries, and 44 passes defense. That defense played with aggression. 2020, they were terrible. 2019, they kind of struggled. 2021, they burst back on the scene. They had 4 guys record 90-plus tackles. 2 of those dudes are in the NFL. Chase Campbell just left, and Marcus Robinson's gone. Then Sam Williams, who had 12.5 sacks. So that production is not there from that pass rush perspective. How big of an impact is that going to have on the Ole Miss defense? Their next 3 top tacklers were all defensive backs. Lakia Henry, Cedric Johnson, Ashanti Shinfrick. Those linebackers, can they actually come in and make plays and help the guys in the secondary, Otis Reese, A.J. Finley, and Keadarian Smith? Those 6 guys are going to be called upon to really replicate and keep that defense moving in the right direction. If they can get some stops, that offense will eventually, over time, become very successful and lethal. Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral in that offense had a couple of years to really gel and figure each other out. And Matt Corral had the trust of Lane Kiffin and vice versa. The two of them were paired. Dart's come into the situation out of the blue. How big of an impact does that have from a play calling perspective, an execution perspective, as the season gets weared on, where they make those road trips to the hostile environments? Jackson Dart, his only hostile environment, really true playing at USC, was last year when he got hurt at Washington State. His first true road test is going to Baton Rouge. They could be 7-0. Everything's all great. You're going to roll down to Baton Rouge. I don't care how good LSU is or how bad they are. That environment itself is intimidating. Whether it's the band, the fans, the bourbon and the crawfish smell, whatever, he's going to have to be mentally strong to survive that game if they want to have a successful season. And that, for not having any previous experience, that kind of worries me. That means they're going to have to rely on a running game, and that defense is going to have to play very stellar to give Ole Miss a chance versus LSU. This team could be amazing. They could be 11-1. They could be 8-4. That stretch of LSU, A&M, and Bama is going to really tell if the Lane Train has his team and this program in the right direction, or if they were a one-year wonder last year and they were kind of like Arkansas, where they look good on paper. We all want them to be good, but then when the end of the season comes, they're just and they're never going to take the next step. Can they build off a previous season and continue to move something forward here? I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're going to be 10-2. I got a feeling Jackson Dart is going to, him and Lane Kiffin are going to find some sort of connection. They're going to run the ball a lot early. That passing game is going to come. The defense will do enough. And I'm even going to say they're going to go to A&M, and they're going to beat Texas A&M, and that's going to be the big springboard. But I think Ole Miss is going to finish 10-2.
I'm looking at their statistics, and you said that they had kind of a defense last year. They had the 97th rated defense yardage wise, 51st rated scoring defense, and was 105 against the run.
But look at that 51st. They only gave up 25 points a game. The offense is scoring so fast, your defense is going to be on the field all the time. You're going to give up points on the ball late, and they're running. I can live with that if you're scoring 30 plus. If that offense is points on the board, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, no. If you're scoring 30 points a game, that's very, very true on that part. You look at this here and you go back through it. Like, Auburn had a better defense than them. South Carolina had a better defense than them.
Couldn't score.
Vanderbilt didn't. Missouri didn't. But, that's the only place where I differ with you, Fresh. But I honestly think you're spot on when you say to the offense. I think that this is going to be you look at that, they had the 6th rated offense in total yardage, and they had the 12th best rushing attack. We think about Corral, and we talk about, he did a lot with his legs. He also did great things with his arm. Dude had 20 touchdown passes, and then on top of that, he wound up running for 11 touchdowns. I think Zach Evans is going to be huge. TCU had the 29th best. While you were talking there, I went over and took a look at TCU. TCU had the 29th best rush offense last year. I think that, especially, granted, the Big 12 don't play defense, but I don't think he's running behind the same offensive line he's going to get at Ole Miss. So, you kind of take everything with a grain of salt in the comparison. I think you're right. If their offense is scoring 40 points a game, and I think that it's highly possible for them to improve on that 34 points a game average, Ole Miss could be. Listen, Ole Miss, we could possibly be looking at a top 10 team right here. At the same point too, if that offense stutters, you're going to have plenty of time to get them up to speed. Like you said, they should be 7-0 going into LSU. They should be 7-0. If you're not ready for LSU, then that's on you at that point. Like, that's on Lane Kiffin.
It's going to be a trust thing in preparing Dart for a road environment. Vaught Hemingway is one thing. Even at Auburn's one thing. I think if you ask anyone in the country, play or play a night game in Baton Rouge, which is going to be more scary? And your first true road test is go to Baton Rouge. When you're 7-0, you have the pressure of an undefeated team, potentially. You've got to make sure that he, number one, trusts the coach and the offense trusts him. They're going to get it done together. If this was Matt Corral, I would have no issues whatsoever. The two of them would think. I'm just worried about Dart. What does he have between the ears? And is he ready for a different kind of challenge? Because he didn't injuries at USC. Maybe he has to worry about that. Not really much of a hostile environment anywhere you travel for most of those situations, other than Oregon or Utah. What is he going to really be ready for when it comes to those situations? Can he actually take that next step and be a true quarterback and lead his team?
Well, that gets us through 20 through 16. We're going to jump in going into 15 through 11 before we get into the top 10 for this year. Got some interesting ones in that top 5, in that 11 through 15. There are teams I'm really excited to talk about for that. But just like I ended last episode, I'm going to end this episode, but I'm going to ask you something a little bit different this go around. All right, Fresh, you're in Vegas and you got to place a bet of Fresh's hard-earned money. Which of these teams you have to place a bet who is going to have the worst season out of these 5 teams?
Placing a bet for the most losses, like the worst season.
They're going to have the most losses. Now, if you go off what you said, the answer is pretty obvious. But
yeah,
how much faith you got in that one?
I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say the Badgers are going to have that one down year, and they're going to have. I'm penciling them in for 6. I'll put ink in 6 losses.
I'd be flipping a coin pretty much. I think UCLA and Arkansas are probably going to have it roughly the same year. I think Arkansas' schedule is a little bit tougher than UCLA, so I probably roll the dice with Arkansas. But I wouldn't also be shocked if UCLA. I can't pick on Wisconsin yet. I gotta see it to believe it.
Wisconsin was 7-5 last year.
They have 5 losses. I thought they only had 4. Wisconsin, yeah, they were only 9-4. Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Minnesota. They won their bowl game.
That's right. They had a couple close wins late. They made a stretch run.
Yeah, they only beat Nebraska by 7, and then they only beat Arizona State by 7. They didn't I'm not saying they looked great, but yeah, they only had 4 losses. And all 4 of those losses are to say what you want about Minnesota, but the other 3 losses are to teams that were fairly decent. You know, you got Penn State when they were fully healthy. So, and that was don't forget,
that was a good opener.
That was a great opener game. Like, if you liked old school smash mouth football, that was a great opener. So, all right, folks, thank you for listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. Make sure you're liking and subscribing wherever you get your podcast from, whether or not you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Amazon Pods, whatever pods you got, or whether you're watching our beautiful faces that are made for radio on the YouTube. Like, subscribe wherever you get your information from. Leave us that 5-star review because Fresh and I, we're 5-star prospects here. The Rational Confidence Podcast is part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you go into spinnablesports.com. Yep, that is spinnablesports.com. Checking out that website. And if you get a chance, if you are a horse racing person and you have not checked out the photo finish, make sure you go over, check out our boy Steve-O. If you're like me, you love watching horse racing, but you don't know a darn thing about it, and you completely lost and have no clue, listen to the dude. He knows what he's talking about, and he'll give you some good tips. Or at least I think they're good tips. And I don't know much about horse racing, so that's why I listen to him. So check out the photo finish, also part of the Spinnable Sports family. Check him out right over there at the YouTube. And in our week or so, we'll be bringing you the 11 through 15 teams in our preseason top 25. Thank you all for joining along with us.
Bye, y'all.